Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome back. This is NycosRPG, and I'm just getting my headphones back on. Give me a second here to get my act together. If you haven't played a roleplay game before, but you've been watching on Twitch for a while, this is a different experience. You can actually play from right where you are without having any experience at all. The system is all embracing, and I'm teaching the ultra basic version known as Playgrounds. We basically have one basic attribute, one stat, if you will, one number we're going to be using for our skills. And as you play, you'll be able to advance your character minute by minute in the session. I'm listing here 4 players, but we could accommodate up to 8 or 9. And I don't anticipate we'll get to that point because this is brand new, and I don't know how many people are just going to hop in and join us right off the get-go. But I just want to explain how the mechanic works, and I've gone over it a little bit before in a couple of other videos. This is one of the first long-form videos that I'm going to do this way. And so I'm just going to talk. I'm going to be here speaking with you for the duration of the 4 hours or so I plan to run the game in the future. And so this is only the first full expansion version of it. This is the NycosRPG. You can, of course, pick up a copy of the rules at NycosRPG.com. The Dark Shards book is available now. That is the first of the system books, and it's specifically for fantasy setting. It includes information on the magic system and that kind of thing. You will find that the mechanism of NycosRPG is intuitive. It's easy to pick up because it will be working off of pure percentile dice. I don't know how many people we're going to have join us today, but even if I don't have anybody, I'm going to be starting by creating the first of these by using the RPC1 position. RPC1 position, we're going to call this guy, what's a good name for him? Let's call him Bip. Bip let's go. Bip. Aloysius. Bip Aloysius would be the first of the characters we're going to be speaking with and for. I will be partaking in the game only as long as there are not players involved. And so I will be utilizing Bip specifically for myself. And we're going to give Bip a basic attribute, a base foundation of 35. No, 30. As we go along, the other players that join in will have different numbers, of course, for their foundation based on what we ramp together. Since we haven't done this before in this format, I'm not, again, sure how well we will do, but we will start with Bip with a base foundation of 30. What that means is we're going to be considering all of his attributes from his, I shouldn't say attributes, all of his foundation numbers are going to be 30 to make it easy for creation of the very first persona. You'll have an initial number, and each skill you take will adjust based on which of the skills you advance. And each player participating will earn the benefits of whatever numbers are involved for your player. And as an added bonus, at the end of the session, you get a free copy of the rules. I'll give you a free download to the game so you can immediately start reading about it and learn how to play it for yourself. This system is very malleable, and it's originally set up to be stripped down so that we only need to go over the mechanics on a really superficial level each time. And as we play, then the game will become more sophisticated as we add more nuances to it. The actual rules of the game don't expand that much, but this is the idea that we're going to be dealing with the numbers initially for just one. So I will be adding, as a matter of fact, I could probably do that. Let me see. First of all, I need to move this box. I can see I'm going to need to move this box. So I want it to be this large, but it's going to have to be out of the way for the players. So let's go down here. Put it down here for now. Nope, that buries Bip's name. No. All right, just take up more of my space. And we'll make it a little bit smaller. That should be good enough. Alrighty, so the way this is going to work is that a player will step into the role by simply putting a message in chat that says that they are wanting to participate. I'm going to be also turning on my Discord so that if players want to join us that are active live players, they can do that. And there we go. So then I will also share my screen with them so that they can follow along what's going on by seeing my screen. Alrighty. That'll be nice and confusing. But that at least we'll get everything out of the way for us. Alrighty. So, as I was saying, the way this is mechanically going to work is that, maybe move this box down just a little bit further. All right, there we go. Don't want to get this so small that we can't read it, so I just want to bring it down a little bit more. Okay, there we go. So when it comes to character actions in a game, you're going to be rolling the dice, or I'll be rolling them for you, if you will, and we'll be able to see them together on the screen at the same time. It's not like I'm going to have a hidden dice tray. Instead, it's very clearly open in here, and so I will just be able to roll the dice, and you'll be able to read them from where you are, so that would be a 61. So, now let's talk about the way the game mechanically works. Every action that a person takes is going to be attributed to one of their skills, and if they don't have a skill yet in that particular thing they're trying to do, then it will go against a saving throw fundamentally, which is against their foundation score. And the foundation is dependent upon which foundation the skill would particularly be under. So although I'm only going with a base foundation of 30, that is the aggregate or average of all of the various foundations you might roll. So you will be, your persona will only have one in this game, but that's because we're teaching the basics of how it works. And I'm going to be doing this in the long form only here on Twitch. This is not something that will be done in a YouTube format, so this is exclusive. This is something that's only for us here on Twitch. So if you get a chance to join one of these in the future, just realize that your participation is not going anywhere. This is Twitch only and Twitch specific. So if you find that you like what we're doing here and you would like to know more about how to get involved, I can definitely share that with you. And I can tell you that you want to look at information like our Patreon account, patreon.com/Nykos, or you'll want to look at the website, NycosRPG.com. So since we don't have any of that at this point, let's just go with what we have, shall we? So we have this individual named Bip Aloysius. And let's go one step further. I haven't actually said it yet, but let me go ahead and state that Bip is a, let's see, I'm going to make him immortal. a human being. Of course, the persona can be any of a whole raft of choices. There are 36 or 40, depending on how you count it, different species that a person could play. So, there we go. And I want to set this window just a little bit closer in so don't run over the edge. Alrighty. So Bip is has awakened one bright and shiny morning, and the beautiful mauve sky is closer to lavender this early in the morning as the sun just crests the horizon. The sun, in this case, Nimbus, is a different appearance than our own. It's about the size of a saucer in the sky. So it's much larger. You can see the curvature of it in that it is striated. It's got color bands across it. It looks very similar to what we think of when we see the planet Jupiter. And this striped solar body is actually a brown dwarf star. It emanates enough energy to keep the planet alive, but it is not anything nearly as brilliant as ours. Furthermore, the nature of life on Nykos is such that you could actually stare at the solar body if you so desired. And so many people have studied its surface and its peculiarities and have noted that there are beings that are flying around within the atmosphere of this gas giant, this solar body. And there are many rumors that abound concerning this location. And because of the amount of study that's been done, it's been determined that the sun itself is populated by dragons. That the solar body has flying within it draconic beings, large size flying reptilian beings that can be seen with telescopes. If you were to take a farseer and point it at the solar body, you'd be able to make out these beings. The breeze this particular morning is a chill one coming down from the north country, and we haven't really talked too much about the environment, but because of the difference in the solar body, the plant life looks considerably different from that which is on Earth. The Nykos environment, therefore, is much different. Is very different from the terrestrial world we're familiar with. The grasses, the low growing plant life and such, tends to be towards the yellowish end of the visual spectrum. It's drawing photosynthesis, but from a much narrower band of light, and therefore it is yellowish in color, as is much of the foliage in the higher branches, but the higher branches also have a bit of ambient light that bounces, if you will, off the surface of the planet, giving it a richer variance of colors from yellows towards the red end of the spectrum. So there are reds and yellows and golds and such in the foliage. This doesn't change anything mechanically. Once we're playing, you're not going to feel the difference because you are acclimated to the world. But I'm giving a quick overview of what the world feels like so that you have an understanding of it truly being a different place, a different world. Daylight and nighttime are split very nearly at 12 hours per. But the night periods are not measured in terms of hours because mechanical clocks as we know them have not fully been developed. They're still wind up or things like that. They're not a perpetual clock guaranteeing a specific hour. And the nights are instead broken into watches. So there are 4 watches during the nighttime each one representing about 3 hours. So you can actually travel during the first and final watches of an evening or of the morning without interfering with the beginning of the day. Daylight will officially is counted when the sun rises, and the pattern of the stripes rotate. I can't put my hand in the right spot. Rotate as the day goes by, so you can actually look at the face of Nimbus and know approximately what time it is, as long as you can see it. Of course, if it's cloudy or if there are tree branches and such occluding your sight, you can't necessarily know specifically what hour it is. And it's only an approximation anyway, because there's no lens, so to speak, on the surface of the solar body that would be able to tell you specifically what hour it is. But you'll be able to tell morning from afternoon, that kind of thing. You'll be able to know north from south, east from west, also by the appearance of the solar body, because as you look at it, you can orient yourself in reference to the alignment and know whether you're facing east or west. Reference that even near midday. There. Suffice it to say, the hours, therefore, during the day are determined by the attitude of the solar body. This plays all kinds of havoc with the physics, and I can only attribute that to the sheer nature of Nykos being magic. Which brings us to the next part. The very essence of the environment of the world of Nykos is that every day throughout all solar activity, the world is being bombarded with magical energies in the form of particles, and they are particles that have been determined by wizards and magi to be the smallest particle of which can be used to affect a magical effect. These magicals, these particles, if you will, permeate everything and even bombard rather deeply into the soil of the planet, so that there is magic in everything. Every being has lived its entire life being bathed in magics all the time. And for that reason, there are no limitations in terms of which players, which characters, what cultures you run into. They all have some mystical or magical angle. With that, therefore, we have the concept of the development of your persona being without restriction in terms of class. There are people who are of religious nature, so you have clerical workers, but you don't have a mandatory requirement to be a specific class like a cleric, for example. You can take skills as you're building your persona from anywhere. So in this case, let's talk a little bit about Bip. With his base foundational scores, he's literally starting out in a new life. He hasn't traveled much. He has many aspirations for more, and he, being mortal, is going to be learning quicker than some of the other beings, because one of his functions as a mortal, according to, oh, by the way, I can also show you this now that I've got my screen working properly. I can actually show you. This is the Dark Shards book. Here we go. And it is about 140 pages. And if you want to purchase it via, it's at lulu.com is my publisher. So you could go to lulu.com and order the book if you wanted to have it delivered directly to you. The price is higher only because they handle all of my distribution and maintain the warehouse and everything. Whereas if you stay with me throughout the game session and you play through to the end, then you'll get a copy of the game via PDF at no cost. I believe strongly enough in the game mechanism being the next big thing that it's going to be highly priced, so you'll want to get your copy as quickly as you can so you can share it with others. So, having said that, I know there will be copycats and such, and so by presenting it in this fashion and getting the game out there for people to participate in as quickly as possible, I give it the better opportunity of being seen as it really is, rather than waiting until somebody else replicates it. So, since we have time here, we're 20 minutes in and we haven't had anybody quite yet jump in and say hi. I do want to also mention that the die rolling mechanism is unique to NycosRPG, and while it may eventually be copied by someone else, the concept of quantum die rolling is uniquely ours. So, when I say quantum die rolling, what I'm referring to is that we have a foundation number of 30. And so let's say Bip here wants to cross a stream. He doesn't necessarily have a skill in navigating waterways, and so he has a chance of falling in the water. And so we're going to be determining this by having him make a grace check. And skills checks are the first way of interacting in the game. This is where you choose a skill that you've got trained or are learning, and you roll a dice against that. And I'm going to apologize for my camera freaking out and refocusing all the time because it's set on a hair trigger. I'll have to fix that as well. So many things to take care of in this job. All right, so we're using personal dice. 10 side, one of the 10 sided is going to have the multiple digits on each face, so it'll be 2 digits on each, from 10 all the way up to a 00. And the second dice is numbered from 1 to 0. So the 0 here is the 1's digit, and this is the 10's digit. So when you roll them, the number that you roll is going to be able to be read just by reading the double digit number first, as in that case a 20 and a 3, so 23. If it was a 00 on the first dice, then there is no first digit unless the second dice is also a 0, in which case that reads as 100. It could technically be zeros, but that'd be really confusing because then the number would be between 0 and 99, and that's not the way we think. So the dice are going to be important to the way the game plays out. So Bip, crossing the water, is going to attempt to cross, and he's going to roll his dice to see whether he makes the check. Well, gosh, he rolled a 95. Now, in any game that deals with statistics, there needs to be some form of statistical significance, and that happens in NycosRPG. Hey, Huso! Welcome, congratulations, thank you for subscribing. Great to see you. So we are now talking about the NycosRPG, so if you want to be a player in this session, we're actually playing right now, believe it or not, and you are my first victims. I mean, my first players, potentially. So, Huso, if you just simply put in a character name you wish to have in this game, you will be player 1, and I would just put that in, and you and Bip will be on your way. Now, Bip tried to cross the river, and he rolled a 95. Now, Nykos uses a quantum die rolling mechanism. So the base number of base foundation is all he's going to have initially, and therefore, with a roll of 95, well, let me start this way. The 30 generates 5 values instead of only 1. Oh, okay, sure. Glad to do so, Huso. Just let me know what you want to be called, and if you don't have enough to switch the PC if you don't want to. Now, if you want to, you can, and it makes it easier to see the die rolls because on the little tiny screen, that dice aren't going to be easy to see. So Bip, with a 30 foundation, it generates a success, right? If you roll that number, or you would think that number or higher, but in this case we're rolling percentage dice, so his chance is 30% or lower. So that 30 sets up his success rate, 30 or lower. Well, he didn't make that. But this game also allows him to have a wild success, which would be at half that value. So if he rolled below 15%, that would be a wild success. That would mean that he did it so deftly that he gets some kind of a benefit from it. And then the third is it has a partial success. This is one of the things in role-play games that's always bugged me, is that with a threshold number, you can't show a maybe or a partial or, yeah, I scraped him or I hit him but the armor deflected. There's no way to show that. So the double up value for this base of 30 would be 60. So I would have navigated partially well if I'd have rolled under a 60. But with that 95, I should say, pointing at the number here, with that 95, there you go. Welcome. So just let me know what character name you would like, and I will plug that into player number 1. Name is Bombador. Alrighty. So let me take a second to go over and change this. Bombador. Now, in order to get a foundational number, we're going to roll if you don't mind. So I'm going to show you how to build the numbers in the game. Now, we're not going to do all of them. We're only going to do one. But in order to show you how the foundation die roll works, you're going to start at a threshold of 20. So on your first roll, you're trying to exceed 20 on the percentage dice. So on the first roll, we roll a 0.6. So that would be a foundation of 20. So let me go back here. Oops. All right. So let's see if Bombador can cross the water, if you will. Let me get this back to where we are. Okay, so Bombador is trying to cross the same stream, following his friend Bip across the river, and I roll a 30. Now, base foundation is 20. In a regular roleplay game, you'd have to roll under the 20 using the same dice mechanics as a game that uses a low threshold. You rolled a 30, which is above the 20. So that should be a fail, right? But this is a system that uses quantum die rolling, so that base foundation creates a partial success at a double up value. So 420 becomes 40. So therefore, your partial success, because you rolled a 30, means you crossed the water. You got a little bit less wet than I did. In other words, I fell in the water. I got completely doused. But you crossed the water with a partial success. So more than likely, I just splashed you some as you came across the stream. So now we're on the west side of the stream. Yay! We're across the stream. So now we have, to give you a description of where we are, we're just outside of a little town, and I haven't come up with a name for the town. So if you have a name you would like to include, we can throw that in here as well. Now, Bip will be with you until we have 2 or 3 players, but Bip is a recurring player character, or an RPC. It's one of my NPCs. I use the team RPC to represent that he'll be back in the story from time to time. So since Bip is with you, he's kind of led you out this far, but we really don't have a particular direction we want to go. And I don't have a name for the town, so if you want to come up with one, that'll be great. We're leaving town, though, so it's back behind us, maybe less than a quarter mile away. And it's a beautiful sunny morning. The sun's just rising over the horizon. The beautiful striped colored disc in the sky, about the size of a basketball in reference. It's a pretty good size sun, even from this standpoint. But that's because it emanates energies that are lower in the band and therefore not as, quote, dangerous as you might think. So, leaving the town, do we want to follow the river, or do we want to go on across the meadow and head into the forest? Let me know which way you would like to go. Just a one-word answer is all I need to know. I'll amplify the story accordingly. So, okay, we want to head back. Okay, the town is called Town. All right. And we're going right back to town. Apparently, Bombador wants to know more about this place. So, wait a minute, what's this town? Let's head back. So, we can stay on this side of the river for a while. I'm still a little bit, Bip's a little drenched and not really thrilled with the idea of having to cross the rocks again. Although he is already wet, so it might be not be so bad. But as you're moving back towards town, no, you're just The name of the town is Town. Oh, I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. No, no worries. And I talk fast, and that's one of the benefits and the challenges of being a former air traffic controller. I tend to get ideas into my head and go with them. So, okay, so we're going to head to the forest. Great. So, as I was mentioning earlier, because of the differentiation of the coloration of the solar body and the atmosphere of Nikos, the sky is actually, as you see in the image behind me, rather a pinkish purple color. It's early morning, it's deeper into the lavender, but by midday it gets to this fuchsia, not quite fuchsia, I guess you call it mauve color. Anyway, as we're with that, therefore the forests are reds and golds instead of our classic think of greens. So with the red and gold forestation ahead of us, it has a kind of a warm feel to it, even in the cool spring breeze that we're experiencing. Now, since we're going in, I haven't asked Bombador, what species would you like to be? Now, I know you're probably not familiar with all the different ones, and you can use classic roleplay game species, and then I will bring you up to speed. Of course, with a name like Bombador, how could he be elsewhere? So let me go ahead and make a note of that. Now, on Nykos, they are considered to be either Grund or Grim. Grund live on the surface and are kind of claustrophobic. They don't like the idea of living inside of a mountain all the time. So they are either Grim or Grund. If they live above the surface, they are Grund. If they live under, they are Grim. And Grim is spelled with two M's, not two capital M's. But I don't know which you would prefer, so I will assume Grim because that is the more mountainous type. But you let me know which you would prefer. As a Grim, I can change that. One more thing I need to change on that. Take out some of those spaces. As a Grim, you love the outside. I mean, as a Grund, you'd be very happy with being outside underneath the beautiful, what they call the under sky. The Grim, on the other hand, prefer the dark places and they feel a little agoraphobic out here in the open. So, which do you prefer to be as far as that's concerned, a Grim or a Grund? You can let me know as we go. Crossing the meadows, it's just a trudge, really. Okay, so let me make the quick switch. Now, the Grund are just as adept as the Grim are as far as their engineering skills. As a matter of fact, the Grund are known for being responsible for quite a few of the structures that have been built across Nykos' surface. So they are very proud of their local communities and all of that. So the idea of going across the structure is perfectly fine. So therefore, I got you. You are a Grund. You are a surface dwarf, and as a Grund, as you're crossing towards this forestation, you're actually appreciating the lines and shapes of the forest ahead of you, and the sounds of nature are just abounding. There are bird calls and the sounds of the wind moving through the trees. The grasses are susurrating as the breeze blows across them, and the difficulty of the terrain is pretty simple as far as it's not a difficult terrain, and we're crossing. I would consider it to be a fallow field. This may have been farmed a couple of years ago, but it's been laying fallow, and so wild grasses and such have taken over. Now there are still the rises and falls of rows that we can feel as we walk through the grasses, and those small trenches do have a little bit of the early morning moisture still in them, so there's a little bit of water that is getting over our boots and such. Now, as we're moving towards this tree line, I'm as a mortal, I'm oblivious. I don't think about it. But the Grund, because of their time that they did spend underground, have certain natural abilities. One of which is they have the ability to determine distance quickly. So, how far would you like to travel into the woods today? What kind of trek? Are we talking a half day, or are we going to be traveling until dusk? You let me know which way we're going to go that way. But as we get to the first of the tree line, the first few trees are sparse and thin, just as you expect small saplings to be, but they are abundant with. Okay, fair enough. So, so there's an overabundance of foliage on these smaller trees, but they are bowed over by the foliage, and a lot of the trees have a natural tendency to look almost like we would think of as being weeping willows, that the branches hang down and droop towards the ground. And the taller trees, at a certain point, when they've grown to a certain level, then they are getting enough magical energy to actually bring those branches more upright. And so a fully developed tree will actually have a more rounded form compared to these lower branches and stuff that we're crossing through. So we're going to go ahead and cross through this terrain a bit, and due to your height, you're going to have a bit of a better chance. And so going through this terrain, I'm going to have to make a foundation check to navigate through it, whereas you'll just be able to walk between them because of your height. So checking against my foundation of 30. Wow, I'm getting smacked around. I have rolled an 80, and again, my 30 base would give me a pretty far window, all the way up to 60 as a partial success. But I'm getting beat up by these branches. Did you bring a cutting instrument? Did you bring an axe or a machete or something to cut through this bramble? Because, of course, I'm Bip's kind of oblivious. He came out thinking he was only going to be looking at flowers and such and didn't think about it. So I don't have anything with that. So, okay, there we go. We have an ancestral axe. That's important. Okay, so having you go ahead and do an answer, you're going to hack through the branches for me? Yeah, you rolled a 99, so you can't get at him. So, okay, may I borrow your axe? Ah, it's your grandfather's axe. May I borrow your grandfather's axe? I'll take really good care of it, but I want to get through these brambles. This is not fun for me to get smacked around by the bushes. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that I rolled the 41 means that I was not as careful as I was hoping, so I'm not very successful, but I partially. So I'm getting through, muddling through. We're moving at about half rate. I give you back the axe once we get clear of this rudimentary foliage and are into the cover. And as soon as we're into the cover of the trees, it's blissful here. The breeze is somewhat calmed a bit because of the trees. And yeah, okay, so that's a good point. We do have in this game the mechanic to do just that. One of the benefits of being a weaponsmith is you actually can improve your devices, your weapons, and your tools. Not only can they be repaired, but theoretically they could be enhanced. Now, in this case, at a base of 20. Now, I do need to mention this. We've made a couple of checks already. And so when you make a check, you automatically advance any skill once per session. So, for example, your use of your axe was at 20, but now because we've rolled against it, you will be at a 21. Now, although I would use it at a base, in this case, it's not my weapon, so I wouldn't normally have that kind of ability, and I certainly wouldn't know how to sharpen it. So we'll leave that to you at the first rest. So you're picking the twigs off of the edge of it because they didn't do a really good job with it. So, but we're under the tree cover now, and as we do, we see some wildlife. Do you want to try to grab some lunch now, so to speak? I mean, we could go harvest off of a tree or something if you'd prefer, or we could attempt to maybe entice one of these little squirrels or something. this is a rudimentary session, so we really don't know where this is all going to go. So you tell me what you would prefer to do. I don't anticipate we're going to get ourselves into any real mischief since we only have a single base foundation. So, so since you did get that check, I'm going to go ahead and boost your foundation to 21 because we did use it and we will probably use it again for more than one thing. So. Oop. Okay, so now to explain why that is, let me get out of here real quick. Because I don't have the skill with the weapon, I had to use the base foundation number, and it will always be the base foundation for me with something that is not a skill. Since I don't have a skill with the axe and you do, your skill will improve once per session. Now, maybe a game's 4 hours long. Just realize that every skill potentially could be improved. So, okay, we're going to do some checking for berries. Alrighty, so we're going to do some nature check. Since you are a surface dwarf, I would assume, as a grunt, you'd more than likely have this as a skill as well. So we roll against a 21. I am doing a hell of a job with the dice today. We may not be very lucky on finding them. Yep, we did not find any berries. So I guess we're eating hardtack and biscuit. Oh, well, we've got at least some of the snackies in our packs, so we'll deal with those here in a bit when we get to lunchtime. Now, we're under the cover of the bushes. Yeah, I imagine your brother was probably better. That's probably why we're out here, is probably get you warmed up so you can keep up with your brother at some point in the future. So, now these skill checks, for example, are useful not only for a straight check, and so therefore we're just playing with the mechanics here. So now that we've done a skills check, let's go ahead and look at the next part, and that would be a challenge. And that's when two people are attempting to counteract each other by having different skills involved. So, for example, let's say we're young, we're foolish, we decide we're going to play hide and go seek or tag out here in the forest. So I'll be at first, and so therefore you're going to go and hide. So again, this is native terrain to you, so we'll go ahead and make a check to see whether or not you're able to get hidden. Now, if it's never contested, everything works 100% all the time. So if all you were doing was whittling with a knife, you could do it and never make a mistake, because even if you break the wood, you just start over, right? So the check would be against the 21. And we have a 40. Now notice, the 20 with a double up would have been 40. With the 21, it's a 42. So the 40 means you are successful, albeit partially. So you're running for hiding, and you've partially hidden. Now I've got to try to find you. And I'm continuing to roll aces. I rolled a 98, so I have no chance. You're now okay. You got away. You're out there someplace. I don't know where you are. And if we're playing the capture my base kind of hide and go seek, you've gotten back. So now we're going to reverse it. I'm going to go try to hide and see whether you can find me. That was really clever of you. And I've got a joke to tell you in a minute. That's a SecGen joke, by the way. Nycos story. Okay, so I did a 12. My double down would have been a 15. So I did not make a double down. Oh, I did. So I'm really, really well hidden. So now you're going to try to find me. And nope, we're doing it again. So ridiculously high 91. No, you have to give up too. So that was kind of fun. But the point here is that now the skills would increase. Those skills would then increase as well. So the 20s become 21s and so on. Yeah, we're not good at this. We're newbies running around in the woods with arguably not a good skill set between us. So, but anyway, so the checks are against our skills. Now, notice this only was particularly decided because we had one success and one fail. Even if it was a partial success, it's still a success. So a success against a fail, the success always wins. If you get a success and the other person gets a form of success, then the graduation between them determines how close you're coming to the resolution, but it only represents that. So if I had hidden really well, but you were able to seek really well, the only difference was that I rolled a double down, and therefore I was that much better, more secure in my hiding spot. So we finished. We've done a challenge. So now the next part is, and this kind of is appropriate given the difference in numbers. Let's say we're going to do something called a challenge, and a challenge is different from instead of a challenge, we're going to about a contest. And a contest is when we're both doing the same skill, but we're trying to see who does it first or does it better. This is the idea of having a carving contest or a climbing contest. In this case, we're going to just try a race. I know I'm cheating because I'm really taller and I've got my foundation's better. But so we take off running through the trees, and I horribly I tripped. Oops. Your 21 doubled up would be a 42 for a partial. So you outrun me. Actually, I tripped over a branch or something. I got smacked in the face. Probably got smacked with another one of those tree branches. So you got a partial success. I got a complete failure. So again, you win. So the contest is the same way, but the contest can have multiple winners. So we can both accomplish the feat. In this case, I didn't even make it to the finish line. I actually had to stop. Yeah, you took a shortcut. That's very funny. So now I've got to tell you the SecGen joke. There's a SecGen Phaeline, a cat person, and a Ursine, which is a SecGen bear. So this bear, Tondaroo, and this Phaeline Catlin go out. They decide they're going to have this contest to see who is a better person at hiding in the forest. And so they both contact the local town and have the townsfolk be the judge of this. So Tondaroo takes off through the woods and sees a tree. It's not very far from town, but he struggles with his 300-400 pound weight and climbs up into the tree. And he's hiding the best he can, but he's a bear and he kind of stands out against the red and golds of the branches. So Catlin's not too worried about his hiding place. She's sure that she's got this figured out. So she runs on further into the forest. Now I need to specify, she is a clouded leopard, which means she's the pattern of her fur is black patterns on black fur. So she's dark. She's really perfect for hiding. And so she goes into the woods even deeper and finds a nice shallow branch where there's lots of cover. She crawls down in amongst the leaves and buries herself down at the base of the tree. Completely hidden. There's no light coming to her. There's no way. So the people come walking into the woods, and as they walk in the woods, they pass under the tree where Tondaroo is. And despite him wiggling and moving around, they walk right by him. They just don't even seem to notice him. A little bit later, they come to the place where Catlin, this clouded leopard, is hiding. And although she's in complete darkness and well covered up, they go, "We see you! We see you!" So she's kind of upset and depressed because she did such a better job, she thought, than Tondaroo. And so she goes back and she muses to him afterwards. She says, "How could it possibly be? You're a bear. They completely ignored you, and yet they found me." And he goes, "Well, Catlin, it's obvious why." He says, "Me, I'm barely noticed, and you are constantly and forever spotted." There you go. So there's my attempt at humor. So the moral of the story is that don't race a dwarf. Yep, it's a DM dad joke, and being a DM and a dad, I get away with it. Actually, I'm a granddad. Not that I'm necessarily proud of that at this point. No, I am. Actually, I am. I'm very proud as punch. As a matter of fact, when I was a small boy, when my parents took me out in public, and we were, I think it was in Chicago, and there was a reporter doing the man on the street reporting kind of thing. And he was particularly asking kids what they wanted to be when they grew up. And there were other kids in front of me, and I got to hear what they said. And one little boy said he wanted to be a fireman, and another little boy said he wanted to be a doctor or whatever. They got to me, I probably said I want to be a grandpa. And the reason why I did that was quite obvious if you knew my grandfather. My grandpa retired early. He worked for the city, so he got a retirement fairly early. He could go fishing anytime he wanted. He played cribbage almost constantly. He played cards with his friends, and I never saw him actually work a day in his life. So I said, that's the life. I want to be a grandpa. So I waited for a long time to get there, and thankfully about 10 years ago, my son did me the honor of having a couple of kids. So yay. Alrighty, so I pick myself off the dirt and dust myself off and say, okay, you want to try something a little bit more exciting? I dare you. I don't think we can do this, but I dare you to enter the haunted cavern ahead of us. I know you don't like underground places, but let me assure you that this is not going to lead into the Everdark. This is just a cave. I think it might have housed a bear last year. But you ain't afraid of no ghosts. Alrighty. So we get to this place, and it's got a low ceiling. You're going to be able to walk straight through. I'm going to have some difficulty. So let's see if I'm as klutzy as I've been all the way through. Poor Bip here. 32. I make it. My foundation, I got a partial. I scraped my head. Ow. But we're now inside the cave. The cave descends downward at a slope, and inside, deep in the cavern, you can hear a rumbling sound. What do you want to do? We may have actually come into a place where there actually is a bear. You want to try to poke the bear? I mean, you've already proven how brave you are because we've entered the cave. But anything in particular you want to do while we're here? Because we haven't yet discussed things like combat yet, or anything that you want to try to mess with the bear, or do you want to try to get back out of here? I know you ain't afraid of no ghosts, but what about a bear? Well, I'm going to go poke the bear because I'm a tall, dopey human. And okay, you want to go close, but see, we can try not to wake him up. All right, sounds good. So you're going to challenge me. All right, so we're both trying to see who can get closer. And in my case, I chicken out. I only got an 81. And you make it. We've on a partial. You got a 39 against your 21, which would be a partial. So yeah, you maybe only by a few inches, but I stop and you are able to go up there close to the bear. And with that partial, you were successful in that you got closer, but you may have awakened him. The bear's breathing has changed. I am now going to try to run out of there. Now, because of the roof, I've got to worry about getting clouded on the head as I run out of here. But I roll an odd 3, so I'm like, poof, gone. Now, as I leave the cave, you're still in there with him. Do you want to try to... You could try to cajole the bear. You could... dwarves have the capability of using sound. They can either sing or whistle to try to put it back to sleep. Or you can maybe coddle it. I don't know. Nah, you're an invader. Okay, you're going to get out too. Okay. Yep, 39. Again, partial. So we both hear the bear rustling as you come running out. I got out of there way faster than you did, but then again, I proved my cowardice before the braveness of my dwarf friend. So, Bombador, you're out in front. So, what are we running on through the forest, or are we going to try to circle around and see the bear? Because he's probably going to come out now. So we've awakened him. I'm going to pull out some of my bread and okay. Let the poor bear stay. Okay. Alrighty. So we've had our bit of adventure here, and it's about noontime. The sun overhead lets us know it's about 11:30 in the morning, and I'm going to go ahead and pull out some bread and Do you want to try to find some more find berries over here? Because if there's a bear nearby, I think he probably picked all the berries clear. But that would be up to you. Not sure what you want to do with that. Oh, I misspelled your name. I didn't realize I misspelled your name. Okay, we're gonna go see if you can go. That would be your reward. If you find some berries and I don't, that would be appropriate. That would be what is that number? 33. 33 against 21. Yep, they weren't very good berries. They weren't very big, but you did find some berries. So that's a good thing for you. I kind of grouse a bit about eating my dry bread, but it's only fair. You did win. And since we're so close to home, we could head back home, or we could. There you go. Exactly. Keep the priests away. Yeah. Oh, that's a funny story too. My players on my Monday group. I have been explaining to them, as this is their first time playing in the NycosRPG, been explaining to them that in the Nykos realm, religiosity is really not so much religion as it is philosophy. And the followers of this world philosophy are known as people who are of the order of the veils. And each veil has a different color, and each color means a different philosophy. Well, they've decided that they're going to be atheistic, and they've gone to calling my religious folk the Skittles, since they have all of the different colors of the rainbow within their faith community. They started calling them the Skittles, and so they call them Skittle worshippers and such. So it's been pretty bad as far as all the jokes. And there was a situation where one of them was being invited to come to one of the faith meetings to understand better, and the others warned him that he should not want to taste the rainbow. So it's been an interesting first couple of sessions. So alrighty, so we've eaten our berries, had our little bit of snack there. As we turn back towards town, we can actually start to look at this from a wider viewpoint. Have you watched my video, Huso, about the characters in terms of the different abilities? Because if you haven't, there is an entire series now on YouTube called How to Play NycosRPG, and it's got sections on each of the pieces to building a character. And if you have already seen that, we can talk further about it, but I don't want to. Okay. Oh, yeah. Nice. Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. That's really, really helpful to me, but more importantly, it helps me to stay connected with you. So that's awesome. And by the way, Huso, if you don't mind, I will probably forever now call you Bombador, only because I'll remember your character's name more than I'll remember your player's name. With almost 50 years behind the shield as a game master, that's always been my penchant, is to maintain the characters' names. Now, it doesn't mean I won't call you Huso from time to time, but Bombador just seems to fit you so far. So, okay, so let me fix this real quick, because it's bugging me. It's one of those things that it shouldn't bug me, but it does. And that's that I missed a B. I imagine you said that you had to deal with your brother all the time. I wonder if your brother's name is Bombardier. Another joke. So, all right. So, the way the numbers work, just so you know, is that instead of having just one attribute, which we're calling the foundation, you actually have a total of 6 foundations. They're all collectively known as the base. And one of those, there are 7 if you count the foundation itself, because the foundation is the average of all of the others. So you have basically if you've played role-play games like Dungeons and Dragons, you're familiar with the idea of a saving throw. So what we're talking about is an established means of coming up with a default saving throw for each of these bases. Pardon me. So you have a base in brilliance. That is both your intelligence and your wisdom, your intellect, your knowledge, your thoughtfulness. Then you have a separate base for cognizance. This is your awareness, your alertness, your attention to detail. Then you have one for grace, which is your agility, a bit of your appearance in terms of your style of movement and such, your grace. Then you have one for your presence, and your presence is how you represent yourself when you walk into a room. Are you the kind of person that causes everybody's head to turn, or are you somebody who's kind of a wallflower? It could also mean that with a high presence that people are perhaps intimidated because of your appearance, or they at least take notice of you. Then beyond those, you have two called the resilience and resolve. And resilience is your physical healthiness, it's your robustness, kind of like a combination between constitution and wisdom. It's your ability to withstand things. And then beyond resilience, you also have resolve. And resolve is your mental determination. This is how willing you are to stay with something. So a character who has a high resolve won't run away in the face of danger, whereas somebody who has a low resolve, like apparently Bip has, will bolt at the first chance. I use the comparison of the characters of Rick and Benny in the movie The Mummy. Brendan Fraser's version. Brendan Fraser is Rick, the resolute, stand his ground war fighter, and at that early battle, he's standing the ground and he's telling Benny, "Hold your ground, stay with me, stay here." And Benny's like, they're coming with guns and racing on horses. No, I'm out of here. And so he bolts. And that's the difference in resolve. One of them sticks and the other one would run. That's how these numbers work. So in the case of each one of these, you would have a different foundation and or base value. And once you have all of those bases determined, then you add them all together and divide by 6 to come up with the actual foundation number. So we've been working with just the foundation rather than having all of the others because we're not doing with any real skills at this point yet. So the first thing you would do is build your character with those numbers. So you would have a brilliance score, a cognizance score, grace, presence, resilience, and resolve. And I put them alphabetically so I could remember them because I always forget them. So we have to determine how we get to those numbers. And since we've been playing with one that was already defaulted for us and arguably not a very good one, let's take a look at an example, shall we? So let's say, for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to go ahead and switch this out for a moment if it's okay with you. And we'll work specifically with Bombardier here. So let's change this up. Let's go with this being his brilliance. Cognizance. Grace. Presence. Resilience. And then finally, foundation. Oops, where did that go? There it is. All right. So the way this will work, therefore, is we're going to go for brilliance first. Now, to make the character more playable, we're going to start again with a default score of 20. And therefore, the first roll you're going to be rolling against will be a 25. So whether we make it or not, the brilliance will go to 25 if we make the roll. We're trying to roll better than when we're creating them. So we're trying to beat the brilliance score of 20. 25, rather. So we roll. And we have an 8. Now is that a 92? It's a 92. So that's more than the 25. So now we're going to aim at 30. We're going to roll again. We're going to keep rolling until we fail. When we fail, the number we were aiming at will be the new value. So we've made 25. Now we're rolling for 30. That's a 49. 49 is greater than 30. So now we're going to 35. 65 is better, so therefore we're now going for 40. 45. 50. Okay, now say that we failed at 50, so now brilliance score becomes 50. That's a lot better than that 21, don't you think? Now notice also with a 50 in brilliance, that means that you'll almost never fail at something that you're trying to do in terms of intellect. You are a smart cookie. Now, there are still going to be chances and conditions where that would not be the case. For example, if you are looking at a book of a foreign language, even with a great score, as a game master, I would say, well, in order for you to actually be able to read this, you'll need to make a double down success. So a straight success won't work. And therefore, with a double down, you'd have to have a 25 or less on that check. But those are the exceptions rather than the rule. And so the rule here generally is that you're kind of a know-it-all. With a 50 brilliance, you pretty much have everything at lock. As a matter of fact, after you gain any point of skill in a brilliance skill, you'll be able to write books about it. That's how clever you are. So now we're going to go for the cognizance score. Alrighty, so therefore now we're rolling for cognizance. Again, starting at 25, or 20, going to 25. We did not, so we are going to be at 25. And we go for grace. Same, going to follow the same pattern. And we call this, the system for dice rolling is called ramping. It stands for roll, assess, modify, and proceed. So we're rolling against 25 on the first roll. We're over 25, so the assessment is that we're over. If we're over, we're going to modify. So the 25 becomes a 30. And now we're going to roll against the 30. We assess again. We are at a 50-something, so that's going to beat the 30. So now we modify the 30 up to 35 and roll again. We're going to keep doing this until we fail. Now we're up to 40. Okay, so we did not make the 40, so now our grace is 40. Is this making sense to you so far? Now we're going to check for presence. B20, going for 25. B25, going for 30. Going against 35. Going against 40. Wow. 45. Going for 50 again. 55. No. 55. That's impressive. Now, statistically, just so you know, the numbers here are going to usually average somewhere between 25 and 45. But you're doing exceptionally well on these rolls here. Resilience going for 20, going for 20, made 20, going for 25. Beat 25, going for 30. Going for 35. Going for 40. Nope. 40. Resolve. Nope. 10 is not better than 25, so resolve goes to 10, then goes to 25. And now foundation, we add these together: 50, 75, 100, 180, 205, 260, 260 divided by 6. 6 goes into 26. I'm going to cheat. Recalculating, as my dad would say. 50 plus 25 plus 40 plus 55 plus 40 plus 25. Oh, did I do something wrong? Yeah, I did something wrong. I'm going to double check. Confucius say, man who has one clock always knows what time it is. Man with two clocks, never quite sure. And if I do my math twice, I'm always going to be wrong because one of them wasn't right. Yep, it was 235. 235 divided by 6. Wow, that's impressive. So we have a foundation score. Way better. That's a 39. It's 39.111, but the whole point is that you round when you get to that. Now, these are the base numbers. Now, the use of the base numbers is for all regular checks. Yes, satire. That's very funny. Yeah, okay. So now notice the where's the fun in always winning the dice? The biggest challenge in roleplay games is that we all want to win all the time. That's the mechanic that's in all of us. One of the reasons why roleplay games have such an appeal is because there is no one that actually can quote defeat us, because we are playing against a winner, right? We are always winning. And I, as a dungeon master with all the years of experience, it used to be players would lose a character, shrug their shoulders, get out their dice, and roll a new one. But I have to tell you, this latest generation of players can't abide the idea of their characters dying. They've now gotten to the point where that's not a thing. They can't. They literally. I've got a matter of fact. I'm on a site called StartPlaying.games. It's a clearinghouse for professional roleplay gamers to set up and schedule games through the software. They collect the money, then they take a percentage and give everything to the rest of the game masters. So there was a reason to use the service. But being part of that, there was an entire subsection you had to agree to, and that was on how to handle players who might get triggered. So you literally had to list every kind of thing that might happen in your game that might trigger somebody, so the players could look at that list and decide whether they wanted to be a part of it because they don't want to be triggered. And it's just so weird. so weird. You should check it out. It's at startplaying.games. I'm up there as a game master, and I've got a couple of events scheduled, but I haven't booked anything yet on it. But yeah, the idea that a game master has to have obvious things like you should have a session 0, so that's one possibility. But you also have to have an opportunity for players to debrief. So if they had something they didn't like in the game, they can come back and tell you, so you won't use it again in later one. Yes, yes, I agree with you. If you always win the dice, then it's just storytelling and narrative. And there are people that like. I can't lie. There are people that like to play narrative role play games where there are no dice, and that's okay. That's fine. But I like the aspect of the quantum die rolling, because that 50% doesn't mean you win every time, but then the partial becomes a matter of graduation for the game master. So he can look at your dice and say, you've got a 50% skill. This is a tough challenge. Nothing above a normal save will make it. Or maybe this should be really easy to use, so the double down happens at regular level. So it gives you that graduation of the way you can tell the story, so that you can deal with the die rolling. Now, also notice that the 55 in presence would put you at a number that is higher than 100% on the double up. Just realize that in every session, in every instance, when you're rolling dice, a failure will happen on a 96, 97, 98, 99, or 100 even. Those are all fails, regardless of the percentages. That's mathematically an accurate thing to include, because in the world as we know it, it's called statistical significance. And it's not unsurprising that the Dungeons and Dragons mechanism used a D20, because each 5-point pop is a significant change, literally, by that very definition. So now we've got the numbers for who Bombardier actually is. So Bombardier has a 50 brilliance, 25 cognizance, 40 grace, 55 presence, 40 resilience, 25 resolve, and a 39 foundation. That's the first step. We've got that part done. Literally, when it comes to dice rolling, when you get used to the system, that takes maybe 3-4 minutes tops to come up with those numbers. But now we have to go to the second part, and that is to go to race. And the NycosRPG has the Dark Shard system book has the different marks that define who you are based on your species choice. So since you have chosen the Grund, I'm going to give you the outline of what those marks would be, so you have an idea of why there would be a benefit to being a Grund. Now, the Grund have the following potentials. Now, you can have up to 6 of these, so you only have to tell me which one you don't want, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8, so there are going to be 2 of these that you're going to kind of refuse. But the ones you have, the first one you have is Straight Edge. It's a grace or resolve skill, which means you can use either number. In this case, your grace is 40 and your resolve is 25. The reason why I put it as either or is because you may choose to take it by resolve only because you want to play a stubborn feller, not a graceful person. It's up to you. But this is the efficiency to determine the height, level, elevation, and positioning at any given point. You can tell how far you are off the ground, how what the angle of the ground is, and all of that kind of stuff automatically, if you succeed at the check. So therefore, you would say, I took Straight Edge, but I'm going to take Straight Edge as either the grace or resolve. You choose which one, and that becomes the numeric value for that mark. Then when you make checks, you're going to check against the mark. You're not going to check against the actual base. You get the difference there. Next one is Digger. You can displace rock and soil at such an impressive speed, at an impressive speed. So you can move 1 ton of soil or dirt per 10 points of skill, and this is based off of resilience. So per hour, you can move almost 4 tons of dirt. That's how efficient you are at mining and digging. Even though you're not from the Everdark, nonetheless, you're great at trenching and digging and that kind of thing, excavating. Next, you could be a chiseler. That means you cut through stone at the rate of 1 foot per 10 points per hour. So you can just cut through stone like nobody's business. You could have land assessment, so you can determine the mineral quality of the soil basically by running your hands through it, just by knowing what kind of rock and soil there is, how good it's going to be for whatever purpose, whether it's for building or for farming or whatever. You have the ability to do magical quantification. You're so attuned to the nature of magics in the air that you can determine what amount of magicals are in the ground or in the trees or whatever near you. You have hard worker, and as a hard worker, you have you recover fatigue at double the rate of everybody else. So you just simply, you may get tired, but you just shrug it off. Just, okay, we're going on. You have resistance to magic, and that actually is what it sounds like. Magical effects don't trigger on you, and there's a reason for that. According to the lore, both the Grund and the Grimm are rock brothers, which means they are akin to the earthen spirits, the spirits of the soil. And the legend has it that a dwarf, when he gets really old, he actually becomes stone. He actually solidifies or calcifies. And so that soil is therefore potentially magic resistant, and therefore you might have that magic resistance. And it increases over time and gives you an increased defense against magic. The downside is that if you do have this as one of your marks, it means that even you can't use magical items because you will actually repulse them. So there's a give or take in that one. And then the final one is low light vision. Even though you've been long from your time in the Everdark, you nonetheless have the ability to see in the dark as if it was low light. So it's as if there was some light when there is none. And if you have some light, then it's as if it was daylight. So you would choose from these 6 which 2 you don't want. And the rest would become your marks. And what that's really meaning is that a person looking across the room would know these things about you. They'd be able to tell, oh, so you would actually pick which ones you would want to choose. So that would be phase 2. And literally that's just a matter of choosing. So it doesn't take much time for that either. But you pick your species and then you pick your marks. Once you finish with the marks, then we go to the next, which is to talk about your place. Now, I use a mnemonic to make this easier. You have them in order. You have the base, then you have the race, then you have the place, then you have estates, and then you have the ways. And that's all it takes to build a character. There's also stuff, but that comes after. So, base, we've rolled. Place, race, you've picked. Marks, you just have to tell me which of the 2 you don't want to have, and we go from there. And then finally, then we're ready to move on to place. And the places are referencing kinds of cultures. They're not actually specifically where you were from in a physical way. They're more the idea of where your headspace is from your family background. Were you raised so that your family is very important? You know your genealogy. You know who your ancestors are. You know how closely you are related to the different champions and heroes of the past. Perhaps instead you are a person that is worried about material ownership. You're finance-minded. You're worried about having a place where your money does your talking. Maybe that's the direction you've come from. Maybe you come from a culture that is aesthetics. You just want the beautiful places. You understand beauty. The Grunt in particular are really good at building massive structures, and so perhaps that's the direction you come from, is that your family are artisans, and that's what you want to work on. And these are all just setting up kind of a route for where your character comes from. And This stemmed in play from the fact that there's a desire for players to know a little bit more about who they are, and the Dungeons and Dragons model, the fantasy role play games model that's being used in most places today, completely ignores this. Just throws the baby out with the bathwater. They'll give lip service to I'm Baldwin of the Iron Hill or I'm Bombardier of the town called Town, but you don't have an idea of who you are, what you are, and this gives you a bit of where that comes in. There are a total of 6 choices, and you would pick one of those 6. Once you pick that one, then there are certain skills that you would have adopted that would have just come from being amongst that culture, and there are a group of 6 or 7 of those, and you get to pick 2, and those 2 are they're just the triggers, the things that you couldn't avoid learning from that culture. And yes, you could even go further and say, well, I moved around a lot, so I don't want to have just one culture. I want to have a couple of them. You could pick 2 different skills from 2 different places if you wanted to, because the place is not so much an anchor or a hook that makes you stay in a certain place, but instead a way of gathering information. I don't know if are you still following me? I'm making sure I didn't lose you yet. But the place gives you 2 skills, and again, they're just the anchors for who you're going to be. Okay, good. And then finally, the last piece you have to do that's really a lot of thinking would be your estates. And estates are, at their core, they are your motivating forces. What is it that drives you personally? For example, you mentioned the fact that you're worried about your brother, so it could be competition with family. It could be, therefore, still associated with family. It could be accomplishment. It could be, I want to be the best at something. It could be an issue of mindfulness. You want to be more aware or more knowledgeable than anybody else. Maybe you're wanting to pursue glory and you want to be better known than anybody else. Maybe you want to be better socially connected. And each of these will give you another smattering of skills automatically. But this is more from your attribution to that. So in other words, these would be the skills that you would pick up from your personal agenda. So what is it you feel to be the driving force for Bombardier? What is it he wants to do in his life? Is he all about the money? Is he all about the Benjamins? Or is he all about the art? Or is he all about competition? Or there we go. Excellent. New techniques in excavation. Alrighty. So I'll do a quick scan. I think I know exactly which one that would be. So the book is broken down into sections so that you can find each of the categories. And so we're looking at estates. So let's see. Material wealth? No. Heartfelt? No. Mindfelt? Probably mindful or the accomplished. Accomplished is about the actual deeds. So the construction itself would be important. But you're talking about the actual engineering and the way of doing it. So I would think that would probably fall into either the estates of the mindful or the estates of the I don't know, it's aesthetics. So yeah, I think given the choices, you would be either estates of the accomplished, which means you're worried about building the buildings themselves, or you'd be the estates of the mindful. Mindful, they tend to they embrace the value of knowing and valuing accessibility of that knowledge and wisdom that it can provide. So yeah, I think we're looking at the elite, the estates of the mindful. So this would mean you'd be studying things like you'd choose up to your foundations base. Now we haven't foundations core. Now we haven't talked about core yet. Core is a number that is derived from your different bases by dividing them by 5. It's literally the number of die rolls you had to make to get to that number. So to get to brilliance, you would have had to have made from base beginning, you would have had to have been 10. 10 would be a brilliance core. Your foundations core would be therefore 8. So you get to pick 8 of this monstrous list, and there are 30, easily 30 skills. So Estate of the Mindful. And that includes diagnosis, dream weaving, archaic lore, current era lore, interpreting texts, learning specific historical periods. While searching a subject, you can actually pick up additional information. So you can actually, on a double down success, while researching, you can pick up additional information. As a side example, the ability to teach is a skill that you would learn from the Estate of the Mindful. And since you were wanting to share it into the future generations, that only makes sense. So anyway, you would pick 8 of them. And so there's a long list. I don't know if you can see how fine the print is there. I made it broader than normal. I think it's like 14 point, but there's easily 30 choices. And so you pick 8 of those. And then once you've done that, then we have to talk about the ways. So we've talked about the estates. It's just a matter of choosing. The place, just choosing. The race, choosing. So now we come to the fun part, and that is the ways. And the ways are the closest that NycosRPG gets to the role-playing systems you might be used to before, because the ways are emulating career paths. So the way of deeds would be, think of Gaston. Who is the strongest, the fastest? Who is the toughest? That's the warrior, if you will, kind of background. Then you've got the wilds. So you're talking druids or rangers, kind of going out into the wilderness and gaining skills out in the woods. You have the way of makers. So that's people who construct things, crafters, manufacturers, builders. Obviously, you'd have a lot of skills from the way of makers, therefore. And there's also the way of wonders, and this has to do with the mystical arts and magics. Now, we talked about earlier you might have taken a resistance to magic. If you did, you wouldn't want to necessarily pursue the way of wonders because you can't make magics, unless, of course, you're trying to overcome your own limitations. So there's a possibility there, but it's a matter of what you choose to do. Then there's also the way of words, and this I use the quote from Sting. Poets, priests, and politicians have words to thank for their positions. The idea here is that words make the man, and the vocabulary and knowledge of language means you can write poetry, you can write instruction manuals, etc., etc. But the idea is that the way of words is a completely separate line of thought. There's also the way of intrigues. And the way of intrigues means you learn how people work. You learn how to interact with other people, how to manipulate, how to coerce, convince, plead, cajole. You learn how to interact, and that interaction is itself an entire school of thought. So the idea here is that the ways give you they literally give you a path that if you really wanted to pursue a quote class structure mentality, you could by choosing one path, one way through the game and pick all your skills from that way only. But the game's not made that way. Instead, the game's made so that you get to choose from the entire panoply of choices. Now, it's fun, but it's also daunting. More importantly, you get a huge number of them. And with your foundation score, you would get 39 different skills to start with. That sounds like a lot. But if you realize that we're talking about a game where every skill is every action could be a skill, there's a lot of them that are kind of basic, like in the way of words, you can learn a specific tone of speaking. You can learn a whistling is different from humming, for example, and so you can have a skill in each. You can have a skill in wood cutting, but you could also have a skill in sculpture. So they're all variances and differences, and you choose 39 of them before you even have to play the game. You get to pick them. Now, you don't have to take them all. Matter of fact, I often recommend what's called the Gumby mechanism, which we started with sort of in our game today. We crossed a river, we chopped some wood, we went into a cave. Those all would be things that you could take a skill in. Spelunking is a skill. But rather than go into all that detail, we were just using one number to resolve all of them. Now, with the 39 skills, you can broad brush. You can sculpt your character the way you want it to be at the very beginning. That means that you'll have an idea of where you want to go in role play, and it will fit with your motivation because you will have already picked 6 of them as a framework, and therefore, as you can see, you can be able to build a nice, streamlined character development through that process. Oh, I don't know about that. Bombardier is more skilled than you. I don't know. You can use the computer. You know how to hit the subscribe button. You know how to follow somebody. You know how to you know stuff. You know stuff. And you obviously know language. You obviously are listening to me, and you learn, and you want to teach, and you can convey information. So you've got a lot of skills too. You might arguably have more ways of words than Bombardier. Maybe he doesn't talk as much. Who knows? But my point being is that this fleshing out process then sets you up so that pretty much you can handle any challenge you come across. The reason for that is that the games that a game master wants to tell, the story he wants to tell, shouldn't be bounded by the limitations of the players at the table. And to make that easiest, anything can be accomplished, anything can be attempted, even if you've never had an access to the skill. That whole crossing the river, there is a skill that certain, like for example, one of the Eldrin races has a skill in crossing water so quickly that it appears that they're running across the surface. So that's a mark of being an Eldrin. But if you take the skill, then you take the skill. So once you got the skills, then all that's left is to pick your stuff. And NycosRPG by far is the easiest mechanism ever. There are shops in the back of the book here. There are pages upon pages of shops that I don't think you can see it too bright a light. But there's lists and lists of shops, little stores that you can buy stuff from, but there's no price list. And literally, they're there only to coalesce your thought process. So you go, okay, I'm looking for travel items, so let me go find the travel list. Oh, I'm looking for musical instruments. I'm gonna go look at the musical instruments list. So they're broken down in shops that meet that. So for example, one of the shops in here is the hospital. And so you're going to stop by the hospital to pick up the stuff you're going to need in case you're going to get injured in the field. And if you think about it, it's something that, again, regular role-play games don't cover. We try to make it as open-ended as possible because the players are going to pursue their course, their way, and their story. And so letting them have the total optional lists graduated so they can find them is a really useful tool. So once you picked your stuff, then you are ready to play. That if you go back and look at the analysis, die rolling took 2 to 3 minutes, making a choice for a race, making choice for a place, making choice for your estates. That's maybe another 20 minutes tops. Then choosing your ways. That's going to take a while, but you don't have to do them all. You can take 10 minutes and do a short list and then add more later. And then you also have the stuff. And the stuff is, again, just choosing. There's no, I can't buy this and that. I can't afford this and that. You can take basically everything you want to carry. And the reason for that is that we treat stuff differently than it is in other games. If you've played role-play games and you know anything about weapons and armor, the process of picking a weapon and choosing which one really comes down to, I want to min-max the rules. I want the best opportunity for me as a player to deal the most damage because I'm doing this as a game to take away hit points. That's really what Dungeons & Dragons is about. And a game like NycosRPG is about the role play. That's the interaction. Even the little narrative that we did earlier of Bip and Bombardier, chugging through the trees, was a narrative story. And while we didn't do direct dialogue, we did askance dialogue because you made comments that would have been things that Bombardier said. So the idea is that the gameplay doesn't take up all the time in resolving stuff. So Now that we've talked about all of that, now we have to talk about the actual mechanics. We've talked about the die rolling mechanisms. There are only 4 ways to have a dice roll conflict. First is a dice check. That's skill against skill alone, like that Princess Bride. Skill against skill alone, as God intended. Then the second is a contest, and that's where I'm doing one thing and you're doing another, and we're contesting each other. Then there's a challenge. I do this backwards. Contest is both of us doing the same thing, but we're running against each other to see which one happens more effectively or faster. Then there's a challenge, which is I'm doing something in opposition to you, and we're seeing which one of us succeeds. And then finally, there's combat. And the combat mechanism really is exactly the same as a contest, as the challenge, but there is included the concept of fatigue. The idea of engaging in an actual fighting environment takes away energy. You get tired. And so the NycosRPG accepts and embraces that, even on the successes, in that if you succeed and I succeed and we both don't get any further ahead, we're succeeding at our attempt to be a good fighter. So we're succeeding at the fight, but we're not making headway in terms of injuring each other. We're both matching blow for blow. When that happens, we're both going to get tuckered out, and so we have to be aware of our fatigue loss. Now, if there is an injury, you've succeeded and I've taken a lesser success, so therefore you've dealt some damage, then I'm going to be taking losses from my fatigue, not only for my actions, but also for the injury, because the injury makes it harder. You've got to baby that shoulder or whatever. And so that causes the fatigue loss rate to change. So now I'm not as willing to maybe fight as long because I've already been injured. And this back and forth keeps tuckering us out. Now, theoretically, with the NycosRPG, if we both exactly always match and we never actually succeed in hitting each other, at the end of 20 rounds, we will be completely tired out. But all the tired out, all the, quote, end of fatigue does is it mandates a rest period. So you have to rest for a time, and that period of time is literally until the next combat round, so to speak. So you both have to rest, and therefore you both have to gain back some fatigue in order to continue. And so then the fight becomes a matter of I rest, then you rest, then I rest, then you rest, and we're trying to get through. And if we're both equally matched, it can be the Indigo Montoya Dread Pirate Wesley. The fight ranged all over, because each time you roll a success that is greater than mine, you get to convey. Camera messed up. You get to convey a condition on me, and every time I get a better success than you, then I can put a condition on you, and those conditions can change the fighting environment. So perhaps the first conditional change, we both fought exactly the same as in the. In fact, I use the Indigo Montoya Princess. I assume you've seen The Princess Bride. Indigo Montoya and Inigo and Wesley both take swipes at each other and don't connect. They change positions. Okay, here you got it. They do it again, and so they go back and forth. And at first, there's no clear winner, and that indicates that the fight is going on, but they're both just simply getting more tired. And so when they get to that one point where they stop and throw their sword across the ground and do the leap or whatever, that's literally, they got to that resting point. They both agreed they had to rest. So they did something with that time, and they added a change. They said, okay, conditionally, we're going to change the fight to that other position. Once they get to that position, then you see the fight continue, and Inigo is the one that's getting tired. He's smiling. He says, I know something you do not know. And then he stops, takes a rest. I'm not left-handed, and they come back at it again. So the tete-a-tete, the back and forth is when two people are equitably fighting. The fight ends only when one wins and one loses. So as long as you're both competent, for example, if it was a battle of wits, you are Vizzini there with that 50 brilliance. You could hold your own with Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. And with the 40 resilience, you probably could handle Inigo Montoya, but I don't know if you could handle an Andre the Giant. But the point is that, yes. The point is that you're, exactly. So that the conflict and fighting is never really about over as long as there is no clear winner. Once there is a winner, the winner can convey conditions on the loser, such as I just as soon break a stained glass window as destroy an artist such as yourself. However, I can't have you following me. And he caught him on the head. He won the fight, but the fight being over doesn't mean he kills him. It means he adds to the condition, you're unconscious. That's the condition. Changes the fight. Fight's over. Now Wesley can take off, and Inigo's now left knocked out. Like fashion with the fight with Andre the Giant, he defeats the giant simply by making the hold last long enough and literally fatiguing the giant, because the giant kept acting and kept acting until he reached a point where he needed to rest but couldn't because he was still in the hold. And then again, Wesley could put the condition on him of unconsciousness. So the whole point here is that all fights in reality are more like those fights than they are in the Dungeons and Dragons games, because although we see them slaying lots of monsters in some movies, nonetheless the actual defeat of an opponent doesn't have much to do with their actual death. As a matter of fact, it's kind of a bummer when a character or a creature is killed in a movie. We'd much rather have the bad guy survive so he can be an annoyance later, right? We know that this is not going to be over just because we won the fight. Now, notice this does, however, include a condition of bleed out. You could actually, that whole, I stab you in the leg, John Wick style, I stab you in the leg, and if you pull the knife out, you'll bleed out. If you leave the knife there, the guards will come in and heal you, but it's your choice, and leave them on the brink of death. And therefore, it's never the players aren't actually murderers. One of the biggest challenges that I've had with Dungeons and Dragons over the years has been cloying and tearing at my brain is the concepts that were started being spouted probably about 25 years ago, talking about murder hobos. The idea that the adventuring party went around killing indiscriminately in any area they want to all of the beings that are there. The Anakin Skywalker approach. Okay, I killed all of them. It's like, you don't have to do that. It's not realistic, and it actually harms the case. I mean, if you do murder people, there are going to be ramifications. And so in a game session, it should be the same way. And also, lending back to what I said earlier about players today, player characters don't want to don't want to think about the risk of them dying in a game. And so there are actual explanations on how you should handle a player character death in D&D, because it's so dire and everything, and it does cause, can really mess with somebody's brain if their quote character is dead. And this system just says, fight's over. It's more like any other movie you've ever seen than the lethal ones. It's just not, maybe back in the olden days, you would destroy all of your enemies to the man. But historically, that's a mess. And it certainly doesn't fit into the cinematic universes that we all have come to know and appreciate. So now that you've got the ideas of what a character is to be created, let me first of all tell you that if you go to NycosRPG.com, you can go right now and click on NycosRPG.com's right at the top of the page. There's a click in for the character sheet. You click on that, it'll take you to a free PDF download of that. Then you'll have the character sheet, and that's a 3-page persona portfolio. So it's got the base sheet that has base, race, place, and estates all on one page. Then the second page is the skills list, which is where you put all the ways, all the skills that you're picking up. And it also has a third page, which is the stuff. And it has a huge number of spaces for things that you can write down. Currently, that version is not computer friendly, although I just finished today finishing the layout of the fillable PDF, which I will be out of the first page anyway, and I will be getting the other 2 pages done today and tomorrow. So theoretically, by Monday at the very latest, you'll have access to a fillable version. So it's just you click and put in the numbers, and you'll be good to go, and type in the text for your skills. So you'll have a printable, usable character sheet that way. If you're old school like I am, just print out the paper version and write them all in, and that's fine too. And they're both equally viable at a tabletop. So it's really up to you which you would prefer. Now, so one of the things I need to tell you is that you succeeded. You have been here for the duration, and well, you can give it a shot. It's in a PDF format, so it may work, but I have not seen that. I've seen that maybe the new browsers will let you do that. If so, cool. As it is, I'm making the fillable version so that it can be a download as well. So beyond the PDF, then you also have this, and that is, so since you stayed for the day, I need you to DM me or PM me your email address, because I want to send you an email copy of the PDF of the actual NycosRPG rulebook, because you are a champ and you've stuck with me this entire time. And I pledged at the beginning anybody who made it through the session would get a copy of the rules. So if you kick me your email address or another way to contact you, I will send you the PDF. The advantage to having it is then you'll have the book and you can build out a character sheet. And next week when we play, you'll have the numbers, and then we can play that way. And it'll make it a lot faster because you'll be able to just say, I'm going to cross that river using my fleet of foot skill or whatever, and I'm going to have a roll of a 45, and then my dice roll, odds of it rolling another 96. No, we're good. we made it. Yay! Now, as far as learning how to DM, you come to the right place. I can help you with that as well. I have been doing it long enough that I have taught enough players how to become game masters, and game masters how to become good game masters. I'll be glad to help you with that. So, as a matter of fact, here in about a half an hour or so, when my buddy Scott comes on, we'll be doing a world building episode. So we'll actually be online discussing that very subject. Okay, so you meant DM that way. To DM, I believe my email address is listed. If not, I'll give it to you. I don't care. My email address is NycosDND, NycosDND at gmail.com. Okay, you found it. Good. Besides that, you're a subscriber. You could probably just put in a subscribe or only comment and we'd have been okay there. So I do want to thank you for being here for this long, and I will get that out to you forthwith. And there are constantly being changes made to it as we move along, because when I wrote it originally, there were pieces that were not fully hammered out of my head that needed to be play tested. I've had now 6 or 8 weeks of play testing hardcore with players, so I've been able to make some of those changes. But the version that you'll have, it will be the most up-to-date version available, and that will be out to you later today. And so thank you again, Huso, for being here. Thank you to anybody who's watching who's not yet chimed in, and I hope to see you in the next episode. And remember, we are on at 9 p.m. tonight with the Session 0 Chronicles. Today, I believe we're talking about one of the Bathran Secgen. So we're talking about a cold-blooded species tonight. And then at 11, of course, the Game Master Soapbox. And I've got a lot of juicy stuff for that one as well. So thank you again, everybody. Thanks again to our new subscriber, Huso101. Everybody give him a high five. Yay, cool. And I will get that book out to you right away. Have a great afternoon, and I will talk to you.